Hello everyone, we're going to introduce domain and range and interval notation here today. So first I'm going to kind of set up some rules that we're going to keep referencing, and then all the problems are going to kind of go over these things. So first thing, we're talking about what's called interval notation. And interval notation is a way to write inequalities, and we specifically are using it to describe intervals and usually along a graph. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is if an inequality uses the less than or greater than symbol, and that we read these left to right. So for example, 2 is less than 3 is how you would read this, or 3 is greater than 2. So just so you understand how we read these. These don't have the line underneath them, so if it just says less than or greater than, then we're going to say an open circle, and you'll see what I mean in a second. And for interval notation, when we do that, we're going to use parentheses, left parentheses and right parentheses. And what that means is it's the border, but it doesn't actually work. Okay? Now, if it's got a less than or equal to, or a greater than or equal to, instead of an open circle, we're going to use a closed circle. And when we write it in interval notation, we're going to use brackets, so squared off brackets. And one thing you should know is that if something is going forever to the right or forever up, then that is positive infinity. In positive infinity, the symbol we use is that. Negative infinity, you just put a minus sign in front of it, negative infinity. So that's down or left. And you can never get to infinity, so you can never say that we got there and we're going to include the endpoints. So you're always going to use parentheses when you're talking about infinity, when you're writing interval notation. So real quick, less than or greater than, we're going to use open circles and parentheses. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, closed circles, brackets, and then if it's infinity, it's always parentheses. So to describe this inequality, this is saying all the numbers between -4 and 3, including -4, but not including 3. If you look at the number line here, -4 has got a closed circle, and +3 has an open circle, and that's because this is a less than or equal to. And at 3, we have a less than, so it's an open circle. But in interval notation, the way we write that, it looks kind of like an ordered pair, but it's not. This is an interval. This is saying the same thing as this graph is trying to show you. -4 to 3, all the numbers between -4 and 3, and with a bracket, that means you include -4. X is less than or equal to 1, so you put a closed circle at 1, and all the numbers to the left of 1 are less than 1. In interval notation, we read left to right, so the smallest number, well, it goes forever to the left. So we say negative infinity until you get to 1, and then we put a bracket to say include 1. 1 actually does work. 1 is less than or equal to 1. And the last one here, x is greater than -3. You put an open circle at -3, and all the numbers that are to the right are bigger than. So in interval notation, we say between -3 and infinity with parentheses. We don't want to include -3, and we never include infinity. Infinity is always parentheses. Okay, so let's actually write one. This says x is less than -2 or x is greater than 5. So I'm going to put -2 and 5 on here. Less than -2, so because it's strictly less than, it doesn't have an equal to, I'm going to put an open circle. And greater than or equal to 5 means I'm going to put a closed circle. So to say the numbers that are less than -2, less than, I'm going to go left, so like this. And to say the numbers that are greater than or equal to 5, I'm going to go to the right, like that. And that's how we would do it on the number line. Now, to describe it in interval notation, the way we say this interval, again, we read left to right. So left, we're going forever to the left. So negative infinity, that's parentheses, until you get to 2. When you get to 2, we're going to say, -2 rather, we're going to say parentheses because this is an open circle. So this interval is saying negative infinity to -2. The farthest left it goes is negative infinity, and then to -2. And then we're going to pick up our pencil, so we use the union symbol, that's a set notation. Since 5 is a closed circle, we use a bracket, 5. And then it goes forever to the right, so we say 5 to infinity. These are describing the same set of numbers. All three of these things are describing the same set of numbers. Okay, you've got a number line graph, you've got interval notation, and you've got an inequality. And what we're focusing on now is the interval notation. Okay, that's the new thing. So let's do a couple more of these. This is -5 to 4. So -5, since that's less than, I'm going to put an open circle at -5. And at 4, I'm going to put a closed circle. And the way this is written, I want all the numbers between them, so I will shade between them like that. Now in interval notation, we're going to say small left, farthest left is -5, and that's open circle, so we use parentheses, until you get to 4, and since that's a closed circle, we use a bracket. Interval notation, 0 to 6 with brackets, we put closed circles at 0 and closed circles at 6, and this is describing all of the points between them. So the way we say that as an inequality is 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 6. Since they're brackets and closed circles, we know that they are less than or equal to. From the graph, we're going to say x is less than -2. I want all the numbers to the left, so that's less than, and it's an open circle, so I use just strictly less than, not less than or equal to. And in interval notation, the furthest left we go is -infinity until you get to -2, and since you never get to infinity and -2 is an open circle, we use parentheses. X is greater than or equal to 4. Close circle at 4. The numbers that are greater than 4 are to the right, so I'm going to shade this way. And to write that in interval notation, small to big, the smallest number is 4, and that's a bracket because it's a closed circle, and it goes forever to the right, so we say 4 to infinity. One more like this. This is one that we have to pick up the pencil. So -infinity to 0 with a parentheses, so 0 and all the numbers that are smaller than 0 are to the left. Okay, so that's -infinity to 0. You pick up your pencil, you put it back down at 5, and that's a closed circle. And then we're shading to the right because it's 5 to infinity. To say that as an inequality, it's going to be two statements. We're going to say x is less than 0 or x is greater than or equal to 5. Notice you can't write that as one inequality. There are no numbers that are both less than 0 and greater than or equal to 5. Okay, so that's number line inequalities in interval notation. Now the last thing we're going to do is talk about domain and range. Well, first we got to do functions, I guess. A function is a relation where every input has a unique output. That means that there's only one output. If I go to a pop machine and I hit the Coke button, every time I push that button, I should get a Coke. If I hit the Coke button and I get a Sprite, something's wrong. Okay, every time I do it, I should get the same output. And all functions will pass the vertical line test. So, examples of a function. This is a function. The vertical line test means as I drag a vertical line across this vertical line never intersects with the function more than once. So it's only hitting it one time. See how it's only intersecting one time? That means it's a function. The second one, there is no x value that repeats, and no x value has two different outputs. So this is a function. And again, vertical line test. As you go left to right, this is a function. Some things that are not functions. Notice, 4 goes to 1 and 4 goes to 5. That's not a function. If I hit 4, I should always get the same output. If I hit 4, I should always get 1. 4, 1, 4, 1, not 4 and 5. So because an x repeats, this is not a function. Vertical line test. This intersects once and twice, which means this is not a function. If it intersects more than once, you have an x that repeats. Okay, if you think about this x value, it looks like it's like -3, 2, and -3, -2. That's two different y values, so not a function. And the last one, let's see, why is this not a function? 3 goes to 4 and 3 goes to 7. That can't happen. You can't have two different outputs and be a function, so this one's not a function. So domain is the set of all x values. We're going to do some more function stuff here. And range is a set of all y values. You could also say these are the inputs and these are the outputs into the function. Okay? We're going to do domain and range now using interval notation. So domain, I'm looking at the x values. So I'm looking left to right. And you got to kind of train your brain here. This is from -2 to +2. And since those work, I'm going to say with brackets, negative 2 to positive 2. The smallest x value is negative 2. The biggest x value is positive 2. Now, I'm going to flip my brain and look at y values now. And you got to kind of look at this in a different way. We're looking y values for the range. So the range, the smallest y value is negative 4, and the largest y value is positive 4. And again, we use brackets. Last thing, is this a function? No, because it fails the vertical line test. It hits 2 times, 1, 2. So this is not a function. Oops, no, because it fails the vertical line test. Try another one. Domain, left to right, smallest x value, biggest x value. The smallest x value is negative 6, and since it's an open circle, I'm going to use parentheses. The largest x value is positive 1, and since it's a closed circle, I'm going to use a bracket. Now we'll do the same thing with the y's. Small to big. The smallest y value is negative 2, and was that a closed circle or an open circle? Closed circle, or if it doesn't have a dot, then that means it's a closed circle. So negative 2 with a bracket, and then the largest y value looks like 4, and I think that's an open circle. Yep, so at 4 we have an open circle, so we use parentheses. Is this a function? It passes the vertical line test, so yes, this is a function. If you drag a vertical line across it, it will never intersect more than once. See, it's like once. We're fine. This is a function. So is it a function? Yes. Let's do a couple more. Left to right. So let's see, the smallest x value, and then this has an arrow, so it's going forever to the right. So the way we say that, the smallest x value is negative 4, and it's an open circle, so we use parentheses. And it goes forever to the right, so that's positive infinity, and infinity is always parentheses. For the range, we're going to look at the smallest y value. The smallest y value is negative 2, and it's still an open circle, so we use parentheses. And it goes up forever, so we say to positive infinity. Is this a function? If you do the vertical line test, I think it passes the vertical line test, so this intersects once. We're fine. This is a function. Yes. One more. Smallest x value to biggest. Oh wait, that doesn't have an arrow. It's got an endpoint. So the smallest x value is negative 2, and that's parentheses. And the largest is positive 7, and that's a closed circle, so we use a bracket. For the range, the small. Ooh, I want that to be better. Right there and right there. The smallest y value is negative 3, and the largest y value is positive 5. And since it's a solid line, that's like a closed circle, we're going to use brackets. And then the last one for the is it a function? It looks like it's fine. It's only ever intersecting this function one time. So the vertical line is intersecting one time. Yeah, this is a function. Sure, this works. Yes. It looks like it's a sine or cosine function. Okay. That is it for domain and range. So what you need to do is complete your little domain and range walk, and then make sure you submit your answers on Schoology. And before you do that, maybe smash that like and subscribe.